All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and welcome to episode 281 of Navigating Now. My name is Michael Nordstrom. I'm the VP here at Thaudium, and today I'm with Grift Krehnbrink, our CEO. And 2 weeks ago, Grift and I were on the ground at the ATD conference in sunny Los Angeles. And Grift, we've got some real talk coming out of it, don't we?
I think so. Yeah, it was a fun conference to go to for the first time. Very, very fun to be around so many people passionate about human learning and how do we leverage that in today's day and age. So definitely feeling energized from it.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking a bit about what we saw, what we heard, and what we're thinking about coming out of that experience. So, Griff, just first and foremost, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Cincinnati, Ohio. About 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, I don't know what that is Celsius. It's divided by 2 minus 30, right? So 10 degrees Celsius. That doesn't seem right. I don't know, it's close. But I'm doing well. And I'm excited to be honest, I'm excited about this topic because I think we learned a lot, both from the sessions we went to, from some of the side conversations we had. And I think it's a really important time right now just to be able to share openly how every organization is thinking about what comes next in the future of work. And I think today is just a chance for us to do just that.
I love it. Awesome. Well, let's start by diving into a few questions. I mean, this was both your and my first time attending ATD. What are maybe the first things that are coming to mind from that experience for you?
Well, I think so. First off, one thing is just to sheerly understand the scale of the conference. I mean, you're talking about, I'm going to fib and flub the number of people who are actually there, but I think it was between 12 and 15,000 people descended on the city of Los Angeles for this conference. So, man, you think about all that brain power that's there in, I don't know if the right word to use is captive space, but what I was in awe of was just the number of people who were there. I think my biggest takeaway was it just felt a little like while the conference had a lot of really great things going on there and it made a lot of space for dialogue, specifically meeting people, it felt like an underutilization broadly of the brain power that was there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just think about having that many people focused and passionate about adult learning in the same place. How do you just make more of a brainstorm, ideative type of environment where people can be a bit more whiteboardy, where maybe the conference still felt a little bit too much like a conference of yesterday, which was sitting in seats and all that. And I recognize conferences have to kind of play a balance between sessions that are informative and ensuring that people can understand how technology is moving. But it feels still like there's an opportunity to create more blue ocean, white space type of environments there.
Yeah. And I feel like we heard a lot of similar themes throughout, the different rooms and talks we attended. What were maybe some of those kind of themes that you heard or resonated with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the theme of the conference was embrace the disruption, or just maybe embrace disruption. I think it felt like mostly people were thinking about disruption as disruption of workflow. A lot of the conversation was around being faster, being more efficient, getting more out of less. I think, frankly, it felt like a lot of the headlines were reading just more broadly of now's the time to be able to either keep your resource count where it is and get more out of it, or in the not great sense, reduce your head count and still get what you need out of a team. So I think a lot of the rhetoric and messaging that led a lot of sessions was about efficiency and about optimization. What was interesting is I think there was a little bit of almost like a reluctant agreement to that. I don't think everyone was super excited that was most of the mantra. I think there was a lot of people who kind of mentioned seeing sessions that were predominantly focused on AI and not being maybe overly excited about them. And I think there's two things that tells me. One is people are getting a little tired about just how much that phrase and how much the technology is being pushed into their face. But it also tells me we're in like maybe the dangerous part of the adoption curve, which is like people are turning it off because they're just tired of it. And the reality is like this technology is very powerful, very useful, when maybe, targeted in the right way, which we're all still figuring out what the right way is. But, it shouldn't be like an all or nothing, yes or no type of approach. It should be much more of like, how do we keep what we need to keep human? And then how do we lean into automation, acceleration, et cetera? And I think across the conference, I just worried people maybe we're falling a little too far on the one side of the spectrum of like, it's either the best thing that's ever happened to us or it's the actual running of the Terminator movie.
I love that. Well, you've already started to kind of touch on this, but like, would love to hear from you just in your own words. What was maybe like the energy that you felt? You already mentioned folks are a bit frustrated kind of with the AI, getting a little tired about it, but paint a picture about the energy at ATD.
Oh, I'll do my best to paint a picture with pros here. Yeah, I think again, like it's not all. We shouldn't say it's all like anxiety. I think anxiety was definitely a big feel. Again, I would extrapolate that to how most leaders are feeling today is like a feeling of anxiousness. Like I'm behind on this tidal wave of change, and I don't exactly know where to look for who's ahead. And so I think that feeling of like, I got to pick up the pace. I need to move faster. I don't exactly know what that means, but I just know I have to go faster. I think that was definitely really prevalent. On the other side of it, though, I think it was really interesting to see how open people were, particularly people who were conference goers, how open they were to going to different sessions and trying to learn and be curious and do the demos. And to me, that signals that like while everyone is feeling a little bit of fear and uncertainty, there are a lot of people who are really, really open to new approaches. And it's like, how do we embrace that openness? How do we leverage that curiosity in this moment as an absolute superpower, and not just immediately think everything we do has to go by way of automation and optimization, but more so use that curiosity to say what does or what should and what should not. So maybe that's kind of me blending my like overall perspective into what I was envisioning out of some of the conference goers. But I think so maybe to summarize it, the feeling definitely was a feeling of like anxiousness and anxiety towards the future with needing to pick up the velocity. But then the positive side of it was like the curiosity and the being around people who are interested in helping other people do better things, right? That's what's cool about being around people who love learning is like they're really passionate about helping other people achieve big goals. And when you get to be around people like that, you should be grateful. It's a privilege to be able to be around that type of mindset.
Absolutely. You said something to me the other day. It really resonated, and I feel like it's a good summary right here. Is everyone's feeling behind, but no one is sure who's actually leading the charge.
I said that? That sounds really smart.
I did say that. Yeah. I guess another question I have for you is, was there anything that maybe genuinely surprised you or stood out as different at the conference?
I think, maybe to give the conference credit, it did feel like there was a disruptor's mindset there. Like, some of this idea of a lot of the pitches maybe feeling like similar and about efficiency and about that. I will say, and again, I don't have other ATDs to compare this to, but it did feel like people were willing in that idea of optimization and efficiency. They were willing to be bold in some of their perspectives. Like we even heard from a few folks of like what they thought the future of learning departments or talent development teams like should look like, and they were radically different, I would assume, than what people have said in the past. And again, whether or not we agree with those futures, it's definitely clear to see that there's multitude of perspectives of sort of where the world of learning and where the world of talent development goes. So I think I was like pleasantly surprised to see some of that. And again, I think it's one of those instances where you tell yourself going into that stuff, like it's very easy to step into the lens of confirmation and anchor bias of like everything that you already agreed with. You're going to go in and you're just going to look for those things and you're going to applaud and rah those, and everything that goes against that worldview, you're going to look at with the tisk and negativity. But if you go in and you're like, I can learn something from why people think it's going to transform this much, you get a lot more out of it.
I love that. Grift, I think 70% of what we saw and heard from folks was perspectives on AI. You mentioned a lot of them were efficiency plays, but there were, a few other kind of like main talking points and themes that we heard. If you could give us like an overview on like what we heard that people are actually saying on AI, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, phrases that come to mind or like, look how fast, or look how quickly, or take what you used to do in weeks and do it in minutes or hours. Like those definitely were the predominant value propositions that existed across, particularly in the expo, because most of that stuff is where in the expo, the conference is where you're going to see all the demos of the technology and all of that. So I think a lot of the language, and again, I'll give these folks the benefit of what I think that they're playing to the learner market and saying, hey, we're going to make your life easier. Like, some of the stuff that's been like just boring and meticulous and mundane, like we're going to take that stuff and we're going to basically help you offload it in a way that still makes it relatively high quality. But I think that's sort of sometimes when you get the secondary pitch, when you just read the first pitch, it feels a little bit like removing humans from the system. And I think that was the interesting thing, is it sort of was like the first layer felt more impersonal than the second layer. When you actually got into the conversation and you heard the motivation behind, where folks are trying to kind of plug in and add value, it's really trying to help people spend more of their time in value add. But I personally believe a lot of the messaging that's out there still feels very much like, watch how quickly we replace humans. So I think that was definitely prevalent in a lot of the conversations. I also, as I shared earlier, I think there was a little bit of a hesitance from folks as the conference went on to join more AI focused sessions, probably because of some of that AI fatigue that, it's out there and it's in our face all the time. So for folks who are in the AI learning space, it's like, how do you deal with the fact that right now saying AI learning is maybe not going to be as exciting for a lot of your potential, whether or not you're buyers or whether they're either your buyers or they're your users, but how are you going to overcome some of that fatigue? But I think that, maybe along the other side, it was like any time we were in the sessions around AI or more broadly, and folks were talking about, this part of it stays human, or like, we're still going to be able to do this part of the job that is all about being great in this type of human capacity. Like, you got a little bit of like a rah from the crowd, right? So I think people are, I think at the end of the day, look, I'll boil it down to this, which is maybe oversimplifying it, but it's like I think a lot of people who end up in the learning profession do it because they see it as a vocation. And maybe I'm over romanticizing it, but I do think like being in the space of helping other people learn, you don't just like end up there. You end up there by a series of circumstances because someone someone gave you a great learning experience or helped you become a better leader. And now you want to transfer that on to folks. And so I think people just don't want to be removed from that equation. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the ways that the future is being discussed is in people's minds being removed from the equation. And so I think a lot of that just spills out into what you think you're pitching people is not what they're hearing.
Yeah. I would say we've talked a lot so far about kind of like the prevalence and themes, and AI being a big one of them, but I'm kind of curious to hear from you. What was maybe like missing from the conversation that you're like, wait, where's that?
I think perhaps more space for, and you're going to get a kick out of this, provocation, like just more space for like the what ifs. I think, again, I may be coming back to the same well on this one, but when you have that many people in a place, I think it just, you kind of miss the opportunity to get these folks to explore possibilities, more so in the lens of, not about like demonstrating a solution that can solve a problem, but actually allowing these people to engage with problems. And so again, I recognize there's probably other conferences that might be better suited for that. But that's what I just felt like was missing, was like the chance to look at the uncertainty and then kind of be arm in arm with the people around you at the conference and say like, oh, how would we actually go after this problem? Or like, what are your thoughts? And maybe a little bit more of that stance I was looking for. And again, perhaps maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree, and that's not exactly what a conference like this is meant for. But I think anytime you get a chance to bring this type of brain power together and you don't let them exercise the brain power, it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, like harness the genius in the room, like something that we always try to do in the learning programs we design.
Or even the crazy in the room, right? Like it's not just the genius. It's like, you're away from the desk and you don't necessarily have to worry about all your day-to-day opportunities. Like we all know that's the best time to lean into your creative, crazy juices, right? And again, I think that's maybe a note for all of us, which is like, this is going to sound weird. How do we find those moments to find a little bit more of our crazy creative, given some of the uncertainty and like the ambiguity that's right in front of us.
Hey, learning's about disruption, and I'm here for the crazy. Okay, so we've talked a bit about AI. We've talked about maybe what we saw as missing. One other thing that actually I was surprised to see so much of this time around, not because it's brand new, but because it's been around for a while and people are just starting to talk about this. Simulations were like a huge presence at ATD this year. What did you make of that?
I think it's a great thing. I mean, I you know this about me. I've long been a proponent of simulation-based learning being one of the best possible ways for anyone to learn. I mean, to learn by doing, to learn by living through, making hard decisions, doing it with a team, like all of that. I mean, you and I have been doing this for a long time, and someone's yet to show me a better way. When you bring someone into a group and bring a group together and allow them to do something really hard together. I think what was interesting is just to see the absolute perforation. I don't know if that's the right word, but let's just call it the absolute prevalence of simulation providers. I think there's really interesting demos around like avatar-based simulations and even having organizations who can like spin up simulations really quickly based on, just prompt engineering. I think that's all really fascinating because again, to me, the exciting point is like simulation-based learning can become a lower cost, more holistic effort along a learning journey where it's like, up until today, simulations, they're costly to build. You got to do a lot of intel gathering. You got to do a lot of synthesis and research. You got to build the right model intention of scenario, and you got to make sure that you get all that right. So it feels like real enough that when someone sees it again in real life, they felt like they have a little bit of that deja vu. And it's cool to see that like basically being done so quickly, and you can do that across the learning experience. I think the one thing that maybe I have my eye on is like, how do you see a simulation not as just a single thing? Because I think when you hear the word simulation, it's like, oh, I think like a tangible, it's this thing, it's this avatar coach simulation, it's this board game, it's this digital platform. Whereas the reality is like you should see the simulation concept as an engine for learning. And then how do you think about utilizing it in different ways depending on what type of outcome you're trying to drive? Like, my personal opinion, AI-based simulation avatars, like really, really great, but probably better, in my opinion, for like reinforcing learning than maybe like having that be the predominant way someone learns. Like maybe you're best suited bringing a simulation where a group of 25 gets together in a room and you bring a little bit more of like the environmental cues into the simulation itself. Whereas the avatar, like doing it on your own, can be a good sustainment or reinforcement activity. So I'm probably blabbering on this point about it, but I think I'm excited because to me, it perhaps introduces like the simulation-based learning modality to the masses in a way that many more organizations can afford to have it be part of their learning architecture. The watch out is just not, getting a hammer and then thinking everything's a nail.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I will say I was pretty stoked to see simulations like so prevalent across the conference. But the one thing that I thought was interesting is that the vast majority of folks were talking about it in terms of a use case for like digital e-learning, where I was like, oh my God, the power of a sim is in those social environments when people are weighing the challenges and the decisions amongst a group and, sharing their own personal takes and, coming to that decision as a group. That's where so much of the learning happens. I was like, okay, we're getting there, but I think there's a couple more things to do to fully arrive to that simulation.
And I think you're calling out nicely, which I think is something you do really well and something our team does well. And I think just the role in the future probably is going to be someone who has the design eye and discernment and experience, frankly, to be able to then say like, okay, I need to actually stitch these different things together in a way that makes this experience the way it needs to be for this leader group in this particular season of our business, et cetera. And I think that's going to be like, going from good to excellent is going to still require that, that type of human capability.
Absolutely. Well, I'll say, Grift, if we just like zoom out, coming out of this whole experience, what are maybe you taking away from it all strategically?
Look, I think I'm probably, despite some of the we call them hot takes, despite some of the hot takes I shared, I think it was really great to be able to step away from our business for a couple of days and chat with folks. And, a lot of times when you're in the space of where we are and just in general and trying to run a business, it's so easy to have your head down in your own weeds, trying to make things work every day, and to get a chance to just explore from an open stance what other people are challenged with, how they're approaching those challenges. To me, it's maybe a big takeaway is like, how do we as an organization get more of that? So how do we just stay more open to hearing how other organizations, not just even from our consulting lens, working with clients, but like, how do we maybe engage in more ecosystem or community conversation around how the world of work evolves? I think the other big thing that's on my mind is like, what are maybe the right steps or sequencing to this AI transformation conversation? Like, I don't know. Should it start with just a bunch of testing and learning and experimentation? I think one of the things I'm struggling or wrapping my head around right now is like, how do we bring the customer or the client into the forefront of how we're thinking about our own AI transformation? Like, it's one thing, again, to fall in love with how quickly or how efficiently we can do things. But when you think about customer outcomes, are some of these moves we're making in the lens of efficiency or optimization, are they best for the customer or are they best for us? And so I think a little bit of that lens we're trying to layer into our own AI discussion. And so I think like this conference kind of reaffirmed, like, there's part of this that's about going fast, but then there's part of this which is about bringing the customer or the client back into the center of what you're trying to do and how you're trying to transform. The last one is there's still a lot of room to grow in our field around measurement. I think that was maybe one of the things we didn't chat about, but you would think that with the access to this type of technology, that would be one thing we would really be focused on. And I do imagine a world where like value-based, outcome-based engagements, come for the world of professional services. I don't think that's a bad thing though, because I truly believe the work that we do and the work that, firms like us do does drive business results. And so I think the pessimists could be like, oh, they're going to finally, put you on the hook for making these things impactful. And I'm like, I actually think what's going to happen is you're going to recognize and investing in your leaders and investing in your people as the engine of your business. Like, these things are going to show up in the bottom line of your organization, and the ability to drive growth of your organization, and the ability, frankly, to be resilient in times like this. And so I, on that front around measurement, I think, how do we leverage the technology to help us tell the measurement, the impact story more? And from a positive, optimistic sense, like, how do we then, use that as a way to drive even like bigger and stronger partnerships with our clients?
Oh, I love these. Okay, I'm going to try to summarize those. So in a world that's converging, we need to find ways to actually stay curious. We need to really focus on balancing efficiency with the quality of outcomes, especially as we adopt more like AI tools. And measurement is going to be really crucial. And that might be kind of a white space that we've not yet gotten deep enough when it comes to leveraging that sort of tech.
Yeah. See, so what I said in like 9 minutes, you just summed up nicely in like 50 seconds. So nice work. I think, yeah, on that last one, I think it's just, again, it's really easy to, it's kind of like the path of least resistance, right? When you get these tools, like, oh, the best thing we can do is just do things faster at the front. However, I think, we should be, as learning professionals and folks who have done this for a long time, we should be pointing this technology also at some of the biggest challenges that we've told ourselves we've wanted to overcome. And since I've been doing this stuff, the number one has been like, how do we actually show impact? How do we demonstrate results? And I think it's like, we now have technology that can help us much more in that arena. And so like, how do we push ourselves to do it?
Awesome. Well, Grift, I've had a wonderful time in this conversation. And to kind of,
is that in the script, or do you mean that?
No, it is not in the script. Well, I do have 3 questions written down. I have some rapid fire questions for you that I would love to get your.
Okay, I'm sure people feel like they need to hear me talk more, but let's do it.
What are you reading or consuming right now that's shaping how you're thinking?
Oh, this is one where it's like I'm trying to stay pretty open right now. I'm reading a couple new books. I'm rereading a book called Unreasonable Hospitality that it's by Will Guidara, the sort of the head of 11 Madison Park. Great book about pushing yourself in the lens of the customer experience. So I highly recommend that one if folks haven't given that a read. I'm also reading an interesting one. I'm early days in this book, but I would recommend it to folks if they're looking for a little bit of a challenge on their maybe commonly held perspective. This book is positioned to me by a friend. It's called The Courage to be Disliked. And essentially, I won't spoil the details, but the book is a conversation between like a philosopher. It's framed as a conversation between a philosopher and a younger person challenging each other on psychology. And this philosopher believes in what's called Adlerian psychology, which the basic way I can premise it is like most of psychology thinks about human reaction being emotion that then leads to us stepping into action to drive an outcome. And this thought of psychology is about human beings actually form the outcome first. And then we choose the emotion to get us fastest to that outcome. Anyway, it's just an interesting one. Like whether or not you believe it, it's cool to read maybe alternative ways of thinking about stuff that is still in theory. So those are a couple.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up with one final question. What's one piece of uncommon sense about what's one piece of uncommon sense about the L&D market that most people are not saying out loud?
I don't know if this is uncommon. I think learning L&D departments become more important in the future than they even are today. And I think they're going to look different. Skill sets are going to be different. But I think, and I truly believe that L&D is going to be more important in driving culture, driving outcomes, keeping a business moving towards its ambitious goals. I think it's going to be more important.
We're ending on that note. I like that one. Awesome. Well, Griff, thank you for just the world of insights that you have shared with us over the last 28 minutes or so. And to our listeners, if you're still with us, thanks for tuning in. And please remember, you can tune in every Thursday for our Navigating Now sessions. Next week is going to be our 282nd episode, and we hope to see you there. Thank you.